What's up, everyone? This is Steven from techmaker.tv. In this episode, we're going to be looking at how to do email authentication in Ruby on Rails with Devise. I've just created a new Rails app, and my Rails version is 6.03.1, and my Ruby version is 2.6.3. Setting up authentication with Devise is pretty straightforward. So if we go into our gem file, and then down here, just at the bottom underneath Bootstrap, or really wherever, just in the main group, we're going to say gem devise. And then over here in our terminal, we'll just bundle install. Once that finishes, we just need to run rails g devise :install. And that's going to go ahead and set up a bunch of Devise stuff for us. And it's going to actually print out some instructions that we need to do. So in this case, we can literally just follow the instructions. So we can actually open up development.rb. And so number 1 says make sure that you have this in your development file. So we'll just copy and paste this in here. Let's do a quick search for default URL. Okay, so there's nothing in here already. So I'll just stick this down at the bottom. Then we need to have a route defined in our routes. So we can copy this route to home index for now, but we don't actually have a home index, so we'll need to set that up in a second. This is a brand new app. In our application layout, we need to have these things, so I will go ahead and open up my application.html.erb and just put those just within the body tag here. And then finally, this last one is optional, but I will go ahead and run this. So this will actually generate the view code so that we can edit what the Devise views looks like. So we'll say rails g devise views. Awesome. So at this point, we've basically just set up some configuration and followed their little instruction guides. But we need to actually get some real code generated now. So we have this route to home index. Now we can call this whatever we want. And I'm actually going to be making a notes app here. But I guess I could still have like just a home page probably. So we can just leave this as home index. So I'm going to let's call it the home controller, I guess. And then we'll have an index action. So we'll say rails g home controller. We'll say controller, right, and then home, and then index. So this is going to generate a controller called home, and then with an index path. And then so you see here we have get home index, which we actually don't need. Don't need this comment either. So now if we look at our app controllers, we have a home controller with an index action. And then that also should have generated a view folder for us down here with a home folder and an index view. Okay, cool. So now if I run my Rails server over here and I go over to my browser and I refresh. So when I first loaded this, it was showing this, yay, you're on Rails. When I refresh, I should be going to my home index now. Okay, so that's basically all of the main sort of setup. So let's actually generate a user account now with the ability to sign in and so on. So if we do rails g devise, so normally here you would say something like rails g model user or something like that if you want to create something in the database, but with devise we can say rails g devise user. And this is actually going to go ahead and generate a user model for us, and it's going to go ahead and set up some routes that are special for Devise. So we can take a look at exactly what that looks like. Let's go ahead and run our database migrations first though, rails db migrate. And once that's done, we'll need to restart our server back. So we'll say rails s and kick our server off. So actually, before we go on too much more, let's pull the code back up and let's look at our routes. So we have this Devise for users here. So we really just have these two things. So before we go and actually start running this in the browser, I'm going to stop my server again, and I'm going to run Rails Routes, and that's going to show me all of the routes that this generates. So that's kind of hard to read. Actually, there's a lot of other stuff in here, so let's do this. So we'll say Rails Routes, and then we can filter to just stuff related to user by saying grep user. And that's going to show us just the stuff related to user and what Devise defines. So here we can see all of the stuff that gets generated by that Devise for. So you can see we have all of these new user session, so on and so forth. So this is for logging in and logging out. There's a bunch of stuff here related to passwords, and there's some stuff here related to registration, so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and run our server again and try this out. So I'm going to run that and squeeze this back over here, and then switch back to my Chrome. Okay, so to get to that, remember we saw, sorry, I gotta kind of find a better way to do this. So you can see here that we have new user session path, which is /users/signin. So this users is automatically generated because we call our model user. If you called your model like account or something like that, that would be /accounts. But you can see here, if we want to sign in, we go here. If we want to register, we have this new user registration path. We have /users/signup. So I'm just going to copy that because we don't have any accounts or anything yet. So let's go to localhost 3000 /users/signup. And you can see here that we have this pre-baked form that we did not create. So I can do steven@techmaker.tv, and I'll just put password and password, you know, to be really secure, and then click sign up. And so this little message that shows up right here is what they asked us to add to our layout file. So if we look back over here, we have this notice and this alert. And so if these things are present, they show up. It's basically how that works. So we have this welcome, you've signed up successfully, and if we refresh the page, that goes away because it's not persistent, it's just a temporary thing. So 2 quick points. If any of this has been really confusing so far, in the next episode, I'm going to go over CRUD, that is create, read, update, delete operations in Rails. So that will help you make some more sense of some of this probably. And the other thing is we can't actually log out right now because we don't have a link that will do that for us. So we're going to build that in just a second, but until we do that, let's open up our developer tools. And so I'm in Chrome, and I believe I'm weird, I have a Mac and I'm using a Windows wireless keyboard, so for me I hit Window Alt I to pull that up. There's probably a different way to do that for you. But if we go over here to, which one is it? Memory? No, it's application. If we go to application, you can see here we have cookies. So let's click on this arrow down and click on localhost. And so you can see here that we have a Notes app session. So some of this is from, I'm doing some development on localhost, so I just have some stuff hanging out. But this is the one right here that is actually keeping us logged in. So if I right click and I delete, well, before we do that, let's go to /users/signin, and I'm going to get redirected back here, and it's going to say, hey, you're already signed in. Okay, so if now I click on this and I right click and I say delete, so now that cookie goes away. If I refresh, now if I go to /users/signin, it's going to prompt me to sign in. So now if I go steven@techmaker.tv and password, now I'm going to get signed in successfully, and if I go /users/signin, I'm also going to get the same "you are already signed in" message. So there's a lot going on here, but that's kind of a quick look at using cookies and how you actually use them when you log in and so on and so forth. To actually add the login and log out functionality, I'm going to go ahead and set up Bootstrap via a CDN. So I'm not really interested in setting up the JavaScript right now. So I'm just going to copy this and put this in my application layout file directly. So in here, just before my style sheet link tag, I'm just going to say link and then hit tab for me, which adds this whole tag, and just paste this, and then let's refresh our page and see what it looks like over here. Should get a different font. Cool. So this is kind of how I start a lot of projects, just start kind of roughing things in. I do use Bootstrap. I don't know if it's cool anymore to do that or not, but it helps me a lot. So whatever, to each his own. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to look for, I want to see the components. I want to get a Navbar. And I don't need like some really crazy fully featured thing. I just want something with a couple of links. So I'm just going to copy this. And what we're going to do is we're going to come in here inside the body. And at the very top, I'm going to say render shared navbar. And what that's going to do is it's going to be looking in the views folder for a folder called shared, which doesn't exist, and then a partial called navbar. So we'll say new folder, shared. And I didn't mean to close the views over here, but inside of our shared folder, we're going to create a new file. And to specify that it's a partial, you just say underscore first, and then navbar.html.erb. And then we'll paste in that code that we copied. And we'll save all of this, and let's go refresh the page on our Notes app over here and see what it looks like. So basically we get the exact same thing that you see over here on the Bootstrap page. So that's cool. Let's look at this navbar code a little bit. So I can change this. So first of all, the navbar should just, if you click on the logo, it should go to the root path, I think. So we can change that. And then I'm just going to change this to say Notes app right now. We'll actually give this a real name at some point. So next, what I want to do on this UL, on this tag here, I'm going to add a class here of ML auto. And what this basically does, I mean, this is a Bootstrap thing, but essentially it sets the margin left on this unordered list to auto, which essentially aligns this to the right. So let's go look at that really fast just to make sure I'm not crazy. So if you refresh this, now this is going to pop over here. Okay, so let's get rid of all of these links except one. We don't actually need a home link either. So what we're going to do, so Devise gives us a few sort of pre-baked methods. So we have a couple. We have current user, we have user signed in. So those are two methods that sort of come with Devise that make us able to check, things about the current user and then whether or not they're signed in. So let's first of all here, let's say if current user dot well, actually no, it should be user signed in. And again, this would be different if you had something called account. It would be account signed in or person signed in or whatever you called it. So we're going to have a different situation depending on whether you're signed in or not. And I've got to get my syntax highlighting fixed. I don't know what's going on with that right now. And by get it fixed, I mean fix it. I'm not going to take it to like a shop or anything. So right here, what I want to do, sorry for all the mumbling, if the user is signed in, I want to have a link to sign out, and maybe that's lowercase, I don't know. And then else, we want to have two. We want to have register, and we want to have sign in. So these two are easy right here. And in actual fact, I'm going to switch to a more Ruby way of doing this, which will be link to, and then we'll have register. And if you recall from earlier when we were looking at the paths or the routes, we have new was it user registration path or new registration path? I think let's do Rails Routes grep user again. I can't remember if there's a user in there or not. New user session, so it's going to be new user registration. Yeah, new, so we can just copy it actually. New user registration path, and then we just need to say class nav link. Okay. Oop, that's not what I want to do. I want to get rid of that, and let's make this just slightly bigger. It always bothers me when these wrap strangely. Okay, so link to register, new user registration path. Then we will replace this sign in, and we'll say link to sign in, and if you recall, this should be new user session path. Okay, so now we're over here. I'm going to bring this out again so we get them all on one line kind of. So now we have this new user session path. We have a new user registration path. I don't know why, but that's all really difficult for me to say. So then we also have this destroy user session path. Now what you'll notice here is that you have the HTTP method listed. So the other two are easier because they're just GET requests, so you can just link directly to them, and that's fine, that works normally. This destroy user session is our logout, and it requires that we have a delete HTTP method. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So all we got to do is basically, I'm just going to paste that there for now. So we're going to copy this. We're going to link to sign out. I'm going to copy this or cut this and replace that again. So this, you know, at first glance might look like this would work, but it won't, because in actual fact this is a GET request. By default, all these link tos generate GET requests. So what we need to do is actually just say method delete, and that will map it to this destroy here. So you can see here that we have this delete HTTP request that's required. So now we're giving it that. So let's save all this, make sure our server's still running, and let's go look at what we've managed to accomplish here. So we've managed to accomplish an error message. So that's cool. Let's go back. I have to add the word path. Okay, try again. Okay, so now we have sign out, sign in, and we can do steven@techmaker.tv. Feel free to email me, by the way, if you ever have any questions about anything. Password is my password on this localhost app. And you can see that now we've successfully got an application running. So the last thing we'll do here, and this is something that isn't really going to be any sort of functionality, I just want to make sure that I show you how to use this. So what we can do is say, instead of just home index here, we can say welcome, and then we can print out like current user email. So now it's going to print out my email right here. We could get a little bit creative and say, let's call it like name equals, and then we'll say current user dot present, and then if they are, it'll be current user dot email. Otherwise, it'll be stranger. And then here we'll just say welcome name. So I'm kind of just getting carried away here, but let's check it out. So now if we sign out, we get welcome stranger. Okay, cool. So that basically covers setting up Devise to handle email authentication for your users in a Rails application. So I'm going to be doing a bunch of episodes going forward, building out a full notes application. I've kind of got an idea in my head for what I want it to be, and I'm going to put together quite a few videos on this. If you're interested in that, definitely subscribe to the channel. The next one, I'm going to go over kind of Ruby on Rails and CRUD and how all of that works. So if you're kind of a beginner, definitely stay tuned for that one, because it'll help you understand how to build out the entire MVC structure, so you can write things to the database and so on and so forth. But that's it for this episode. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you in the next one.